Hey everyone, so in this video we are going to start tracking which objects are colliding with the tiles. So currently when the blob collides with a tile, it changes the color. We don't want that to happen, but we just had no control in place yet that checked to see which object was colliding. Also, we are now going to add a new enemy. This enemy's motion path will be similar to the blob, but when this enemy lands on a tile, it reverts the color. So basically the exact opposite of what the blob is doing unintentionally, it's going to intentionally do the opposite, and that is revert the color, because what he does is he's undoing what QBert is doing. So he will actually be kind of a culmination of everything we've learned up to this point, because just like QBert, he does have a direction he needs to face, unlike the blob. He is going to move like the blob, and he's going to reverse the color of the tile. So we're kind of bringing everything together. And the way we're going to do this, we're going to use tags, which I mentioned in a last video, maybe the one before that as well. So a tag is a way of determining what object is being identified. It gives you a way to identify an object, whether it's due to a collision or some other event. So what we're going to do, we're going to create three tags, one for QBert, one for the blob, one for the nerd. If we ever add the snake, which will probably be one of the last videos I do for the series, the snake will also have its own tag. So what we're going to do, we're going to click on the blob, and actually at the moment it doesn't matter which one we click on. And up here we're going to click on tag and add tag. Just to clarify, choosing add tag does not actually add the tag to this object. It's actually creating a whole new tag. You then have to come back and select that tag. So list is empty. We're going to click on plus, and we'll do one for QBert. Save. One for, we'll just call him nerd. Save. And one for blob. Save. And now what we do is we now have to go back into these objects. See how it's not tagged? Because you're really creating a new tag. And so the blob will be blob. Can't do the nerd yet because I need to create a game object out of him. Right now he's just an asset. But we can go to our QBert object, and we'll probably eventually turn QBert into a prefab as well. We'll see. We can decide that towards the end. So QBert is going to be QBert, and let's go ahead and just make the nerd. So let's click, drag him in. I already shrunk him. I mentioned how when I use eBuilder, when I use 3D Builder, my apologies, when I use 3D Builder, it makes the object enormous, so I just have to shrink it down. We also need to rotate him like we did with QBert, so I believe, was that -90? Yes, and then 180 on Z. And so he will also get spawned, instantiated by the GM object and the game flow script. So we can just drag and put him in there. It's an original prefab. Delete him from the scene. We'll come back to him in a few minutes, and that gets us set to start checking what objects are colliding with what ones. And actually, there's one other object in addition to the snake that I will add. There is actually a green blob that is, if you click on it, if I recall correctly, it freezes all the enemies. So that will have its own tag as well, and that one actually has a benefit rather than a detriment. Okay. And a brief splice due to more technical issues. So let's work with the nerd a little bit longer. So let's go back to our prefab, and we're basically going to prepare the nerd just like we did the blob. So add component, physics, rigid body. We want gravity, so that's fine. I'm not going to freeze the rotation yet. If we need to, it's just easy enough to check that. Add component, physics, box collider. So this will take a little finagling just like the other times. And again, nothing really precise about this. The main thing is that the collider lines up with the feet, or else he'll be either floating over or passing through the tile. So we definitely need to make sure that's more accurate. But the other stuff is just general lining up. And like I said, I'm not too worried about the top of the object. We can always change that if necessary as far as making the collider box match it. But sometimes you want a little bit of forgiveness, particularly with a 3D environment like that where it's a little bit hard to see exactly what's overlapping. So you basically give the player the benefit of the doubt. Sorry, just trying to lower this and it's not cooperating. There. Okay. So now let's make the script that controls the nerd's movement. Have to open up this again because, like I said, had some technical difficulties. And what we're going to do is we're just going to copy this from the blobcon script and put it into the new nerdcon script. Could I technically use the same script for both enemies? Yes, but then I'm going to have to put in some if statements to check which enemy the script is attached to. So 6 one way, 1/2 dozen the other. I'd rather just do it this way because it makes a little bit more clear what's going on. So nerd con. And not sure why it does that. It opens even though it didn't open that particular script. So similar outside of start, outside of update. We put in the collider. So basically, when the object the script is attached to collides with another object, and right now we're not checking, we're just presuming that it is the tile, random number is generated, and that will determine which direction it jumps down, either to the left or the right. So we go back to our nerd object, and we attach the script. So now should be basically in line with the blob. Like I said, the only thing is we froze the rotation. We'll see if we actually need to do that with the nerd. And yet another splice. So go to the nerd and go ahead and freeze the rotation. And I'm not quite sure why, but I actually had to tweak the collider box because when he dropped on the top tile, he wasn't moving. And to be honest, I'm not quite sure why. There shouldn't be anything up there preventing him from moving, but for some reason, I had to tweak this up and down a little bit. So not sure why, because again, the object, the 3D model itself isn't what's being used for collision, the box was, but for some reason, I had to tweak the box for the collision to work. Either that or it might just been a Unity moment. Any application can bug out, so I'm not sure if that's really what fixed it or if for some bizarre reason Unity was just bugging out just like any other application. So my apologies. I hope that doesn't cause any confusion. It's just I didn't want to see, didn't want you seeing me fumbling around. I'm not sure why that fixed it because it should not change what's being collided with up here. So anyways, let's now move this down. He lands and all is good. Now he bounced on me, so I'll just have to move him out of the way a little bit more. So far so good. As I mentioned, a couple things. One, we don't want him to progress the color. We want him to regress the color, which is fine because we haven't done that yet. And two, we're going to have to rotate him. But so far, so good. Now we're going to have, let's do the color changing. So, tiles. So this is when the tags are going to come into play now. So if other dot game object. Make sure I just selected the right one. Yep. Dot tag equals QBert. And then this entire thing goes into squiggly brackets. So everything inside of the on collision enter is now subject to an if statement. So what's happening is the tile is now checking the tag of the object that's colliding with it. If it's QBert, then this happens. So actually, let's run that to make sure that works, but it should. So what's going to happen now, QBert will continue to change color. That nerd who comes down will not, nor will the other ones. There we go, there we go, there we go. He did not change any of those. And let's just make sure that the other blob does not change either. So it was that easy to fix it, just checking the tag. You're identifying what is colliding with the tile. And now we just build on that. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to copy this whole thing. And now we're going to check to see if the collision is with nerd. Sorry, I've done a few takes. I just want to make sure I actually created the nerd tag. I had created it, but I had not attached it. The other ones were working though, so I think those should be fine. Yeah. So my apologies if this one's been a little haphazard. Like I said, I was having a few technical issues, which I'm not sure why, so caused me to have to splice a few times, but I don't think anything is missing. You can see the entirety of the code on the screen for each script anyway, so if the tag of the game object that's colliding with the tile, if the tag is nerd, we want the color to actually be increased by 1. So color status plus equals 1. If color status is equal to 1, eventually that's going to have to be a variable because, like I said, sometimes the tiles have to be changed 2 or 3 times, but again, iterative. So if the color status is 1, then we don't want green color, we're going to want white. So just as we did this up here, public material white color. And now that that's there, white. Oh, it'd be nice if I could spell. Let's try that again. There we go. Okay, so if the tag of the object that's colliding with the tile is nerd, then color status, this variable is increased by 1, or the value of the variable is increased by 1. And then we check, well, if color status is equal to 1, then we need to revert it back to the white color. Like I said, this isn't perfect because once we have 2, 3, 4 different colors, we will have to check accordingly. And we don't want tiles to be increased. We want decreased by 1. We want tiles to be increased by 1. So that should be all the changes that need to be made. Excellent. And so if this works, this might be a good cutoff point. So let's change some tiles to make sure he has things to change. Oh, you know what I did? So I created the reference to the color. So need to select these. white color. There we go. So I'm just selecting all the tiles and then putting white color for white color. But it did change, so we know it's right. It just couldn't find the material itself. So let's do this, and then this, and then this, and then this. Give it plenty to change. There we go. So we're going to do this one more time. I'm just going to create a longer delay on the game, on his spawning, so I have more time to change. So we do this, and then we do this, and then we do this, and then this, and this, and this. There we go. So he's not changing the ones that have not been changed yet, but he is changing ones that have been changed, and these are also not doing anything either. We already confirmed that before. So I think that's a good place to end. So we've added a new enemy. He has the correct pathing, and he has the ability to revert the color of a tile. Now, the other thing that we need to do, and I might do it in a separate video when we put in a bunch of the controls, and that is right now the tile really should have an upper limit as well. So I mentioned that we need to check not just for 1, but also 2 and 3 and 4 for when there's more colors, but also we don't want this to exceed 1 at the moment. So because what will happen is if another guy comes down and lands on it again, then color status will become 2, and then 3, and then 4 every time one clicks on it, and QBert would have to jump on it repeatedly. We want this number to go no higher than the amount of color changes there are. But we can always do that in a separate video. Okay, so my apologies that there were several splices. I don't think I missed anything. I think it's all there. Like I said, I was just having a technical issue with Unity. It annoys me when that happens where I fix something and I'm not quite sure why. And so I'm thinking it was just being glitchy because I don't understand why tweaking the collider box should have made it different because there shouldn't have been any collisions occurring. Okay, so I hope this has been helpful. And again, if there's certain features you want to see, leave a comment and I'll do my best to get to them. And have a good day.